Is there anything you would have done differently?
We reported a true story.
Our colleague Brian Williams is back in Kuwait City tonight after a close call in the skies over Iraq.
Controversial Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh and questions about Kavanaugh's drinking in the past.
Sean Hannity, come on up, Sean Hannity.
Today, Andrew Cuomo is having a moment.
Hi there, I am Chris Steyerwalt.
And I'm Eliana Johnson.
Welcome to Ink Stained Wretches, where we break down what's going wrong, yes, and what's going right. With the American news media, Eliana Johnson. Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We're doing it. April is the cruelest month. It goes real fast now. And I don't know, you're probably in the parenting phase, not at this part, but the time between New Year's and spring break is approximately 10,000 years. And then the time between spring break and the end of the year, school year, is about 30 seconds long. And you just open your eyes and you say, oh my gosh, and I'm getting married. All this stuff is happening and it's going too fast. I'm going to level with you. Too fast.
What's the actual wedding plan here?
It's going to be awesome. Release of doves. I'm going to jump a flaming school bus on a motorcycle. It's going to be amazing.
Well, I look forward to celebrating.
The one thing I know for sure, the only thing that really matters to me about my wedding is who I'm marrying.
Oh, here we go.
Oh no, it's true. It's a true fact. I got that right, and whatever else will be wonderful.
Okay.
Oh, it's true.
All right. That brings us to our front page. And let's talk about the tariffs. Before we get into anything, I was struck, Trump did this event yesterday announcing his new tariffs.
Liberation Day, please.
Liberation Day.
Please.
4:00 yesterday. We're recording on Thursday, so it was Wednesday afternoon. And he had these big charts. And by contrast to a lot of the Oval Office events we've seen, particularly the one about, banning transgender kids from girls' sports or, boys from girls' sports, where he was surrounded by these little girls in their uniforms. It was really cute. This was not, I think he meant it to be visually engaging. I couldn't see the freaking chart.
When he didn't have an easel. He didn't have an easel. So he's holding it himself.
Any of the figures on the chart.
And they had auto work. So the United Auto Workers are all in on the tariffs, and they had some auto workers in the crowd, but it seemed like, you'll be surprised to hear, it seemed like there had not been thorough planning that went into the event, because on the one hand, it seemed like Trump was going for gravitas. They decked out, they festooned the Rose Garden with American flags. He stands alone, is there, and this is going to be solemn and momentous. And then they're like, but we need a chart. Okay, well, let's print something up. And then nobody had an easel. And then Trump is holding it like he's one of those people juggling a sign at the intersection with an arrow telling you that Subway has $5 footlongs. And it was certainly a strange effect.
It just struck me as a contrast to the way these things have gone in this administration, where typically they have been pretty visually striking and engaging. This was not.
I think they were betwixt and between. I think they wanted one thing and then it ended up being another thing.
So there was a big brouhaha last night. I think there was some confusion around how these tariff rates were calculated as a result of these charts that said, here's the rate at which the chart said tariffs charged to the USA, and it claimed, for example, that China charges us a 67% tariff, and that we were going to charge them half. Sorry, go ahead.
The media got what was on the chart that Trump was holding. They got it as a handout. And everybody said, what is this? What are these numbers? I don't understand what these numbers are. And is the media angle of this that I found so interesting. As the administration is not telling, and as the financial press is scrambling to make sense of, okay, what is it? What is it really? A guy on Twitter, happened again, a guy on Twitter, here's how the New York Times wrote it up.
Well, not really a guy on Twitter, but, you know.
Well, James.
Somebody.
Well, I'm not, but he is a guy and he was on Twitter.
Yes.
He was not the chief financial correspondent for the Wall Street Journal, right?
Okay.
He's an investment guy. He's not a journalist. He's not a journalist. James Surowiecki. I apologize, Mr. Surowiecki, a financial writer and book author, first pointed out the trend in a post on X. His comment set off widespread speculation. So he was trying to figure it out, got to it, and the answer is taking the trade deficit that America runs with any nation and dividing it by the exports that the country sent to the United States. Then, because Trump said he was being, quote, kind, the final tariff number was cut in half. And it was interesting to me from a media perspective where that came from, right? That this was I don't spend a lot of time with the financial press. I don't spend a lot of time in that space. I don't understand money and I don't think about it. But wow, those guys are busy and they know a lot of stuff. And I always appreciate business reporters and these financial guys and gals whenever my life intersects with them.
So that was super interesting. I mean, it was funny because typically the White House would supply reporters with lots of information about this sort of thing beforehand, so that reporters would be able to thus explain it to people in their stories. But I'm not even sure many people at the White House knew what was going, what these rates were going to be.
I also don't think that they wanted to say that they were doing something this dumb, right?
Which is why the event was held after the markets closed, et cetera. But it's like,
well, but not just,
how long can you really keep it secret for?
So you have the one part, which is the policy part, which is look, I believe that the people who believe that the tariffs will be worth the pain believe what they're saying. I don't think that they're lying. I think that they believe that this will be painful and expensive, but that in the long run, it will be for the good of the country. The dumb part as the story goes is, I don't think the Treasury Secretary, I don't think that people who understand how trade works and money works wanted to say, yeah, we were talking about it, so we figured we'll just do this. And my favorite was when reporters start peppering the White House with, is it possible that what you did here was call a trade deficit a tariff? And you've made this up completely and they're not reciprocal tariffs? They sent them back a very complicated looking algebraic equation with Greek symbols in it. And then and the New York Times goes through all that. So I think they were embarrassed by the fact that it undercuts the rest of the argument when you say, how did we come up with these numbers? You'd be surprised to hear that we were that this was a back of the envelope endeavor. I don't know how much of this remains. I don't know how much of this ends up staying. I don't know. I don't know. And I don't think anybody really knows. This is not Smoot-Hawley, right? This is not an act of Congress that sets the rates. So on the good side for the economy, they can go away as easily as they were summoned. On the downside for the economy is nobody has any predictability about how much anything is going to cost. And it's a fluid situation, to say the least.
The only thing I was going to say is, this is obviously not my area of expertise. What are the impacts of tariffs and et cetera. However, this is like a weird way to name drop. I did speak
Here
with,
we go.
yeah, I did speak with, and this was not on the record or for attribution, I will say, very distinguished economist who is not of the Krugman school. So, not a left-wing guy who is pro-tariff, who said, look, I really think people are hyperventilating about this and they're just reading too much into what the impact of these things are going to be. And look, basically they're a tax. Taxes are bad, but it's not different than we have taxes on all sorts of things. And his view was basically that if you look back over the last, 100, 200 years of history, we can really only study the impact of 10% tariffs, and it's not catastrophic. These are different, so we don't really know what the impact will be. But that was interesting. I was like, okay, it's counterintuitive view to take into account.
I certainly agree that an financially and economically illiterate press is getting that part wrong. But I also agree in the core part, which is this is a huge tax increase. It's
a net for sure.
This is the largest tax increase since certainly since the 1990s. This is a huge tax increase. And if you imposed, well, put it this way, if Congress passed and the president signed a tax increase of $600 billion a year, markets would respond because they would say, oh my gosh, you're sucking $600 billion more out of the economy. So that's bad. And it's going to have these downstream effects. But I definitely agree that this has been both Trump. This is another place where both Trump and hostile media agree. Donald Trump wants you to believe that he is the master of the world economy and that with the stroke of a pen, he can change the trajectory of everything in one day. And his critics want to believe that too. And as a result, very often the nuance of the kind that you're talking about gets lost. Yeah, this is obviously a huge this is a gigundous tax increase. But to my earlier point, we don't even know what it is. We don't even know. Much of it is in abeyance. How many carve outs? My gosh, the lobbying. And, one of the big problems, then I'll shut up about this. One of the big problems with tariffs is corruption. One of the reasons that the United States got rid of a tariff-based system of revenue was it's all about corruption. It's all about which business do we like and which business supports our team, and we're going to help them. We're going to punish the people from the states or places or regions or parties that we don't like. The invitation to cronyism and corruption is irresistible, and it's one of the reasons that it's very bad. And if you put all of that power in the hands of one person, which is only exists that way because we stopped having revenue-based tariffs. The only reason they have that is because we weren't doing that anymore. And Congress is like, yeah, go ahead and use it as a bargaining tool. When you put that all in the hands of one person, the amount of corruption and lobbying and grossness and favoritism is going to be bananas.
From a media angle, the interesting thing is that if this was just a huge tax increase, the media coverage would not be as hysterical as it is about this. And the political parties would be totally switched. Republicans would be decrying this. I think more Republicans would be coming out against it. And the Democrats would not be saying a thing.
Right. If this was a $600 billion annual tax increase on Americans earning more than $250,000, Democrats would say it's about time that they're paying their fair share. And Republicans would be saying, these are the job creators. You're sucking the money out of the country. But in this case, it's a consumption tax. So it will hit poor people more, right? It'll be regressive because it'll be a bigger part of their income, but it will hit everybody. It will land everywhere. But I have to include, to your point about code switching on taxes. on Fox News, Harris Faulkner had a message for how the people should think about the tariffs and what the administration should say. Colin, roll that beautiful bean footage.
And those 401k people who are depending, those retirees, all of that, just talking plain speak with them. Look, when this nation used to go to war, people in this country would support the war effort with their materials at home and making things for weaponry and all of that. We got to do 100% buy-in over this bumpy period. Just communicate.
Kaylee.
So there you have it,
Yeah,
Eliana.
that would not be the messaging if
There you have it. What the White House should be telling people is we're at war with Canada? ? And in order to make a new economy, you're going to get your 401k torched. And that's just a cost of doing business. That's as I like to say, if you want to make a golden age omelet, you're going to have to break a few nest eggs.
Okay, up next, the special elections that we had. So there were 3 this week. Republicans retained 2 House seats in Florida that were held to replace Mike Waltz, who left Congress to become Trump's national security advisor. There was a special election for a Supreme Court race in
Regular election.
An off-year election for a Supreme Court race in Wisconsin. And what was the third? Who else joined the Trump cabinet?
So it was the Matt Gaetz.
seat. Yes. So Matt Gaetz left Congress because he was going to be attorney general and his nomination was pulled and blah, blah. So anyways, so it was to replace him. The Republicans held on to those seats, although not with margins as large as Waltz and Gaetz had, which I think is to be expected because they were incumbents. However, Elon Musk poured a ton of money into this Wisconsin Supreme Court race because the governor of Wisconsin, Democrat Tony Evers, is trying to gerrymander congressional seats in that state. And Musk had told people he's concerned that Republicans will lose congressional seats because of this gerrymander. And he was working to increase the GOP margin on the Supreme Court in Wisconsin to prevent that from happening.
That's a very generous way to describe what Elon Musk said. That's a very generous.
How would you describe it?
He said that the future of Western civilization
Yes.
hinges on the outcome. So the Wisconsin is one of the sad stories about what happened to politics in America. And because they so often have divided and hatefully divided government, the Supreme Court ends up being another legislature, basically. And the Republicans had control until it's a 7-member court, and the Republicans had control until 2023. And then the Democrats replaced a retiring Republican. And again, we have to stipulate they're not technically partisan, but they're extraordinarily partisan. They're even more they are even more partisan than ones that are not nominally nonpartisan. So the Republicans got the majority or lost the majority on the court in 23. And then they had a retiring liberal this time, and the Republicans thought they could get it back. They could get back the 4-3 majority. Wisconsin's a swing state. Obviously, it's the swing state that's right in the middle of the 7 swing states. Donald Trump won it by 0.8 of a point, I think. So it's a perfect battleground. It's a great bellwether. It tells us all that stuff. And Musk has a problem in Wisconsin because Wisconsin has some crazy law that automakers can't own dealerships. Another kind of protectionism, some carve out built for automakers however long ago. Musk is trying to get it struck down. And he also is obviously crazy. So he embraced this idea of playing in the Supreme Court race there and ends up spending at least $25 million and giving away $50 bounties for people who posted pictures. He gave away $1 million checks to activists in the state that they kind of said was a contest, but it was actually, looks like they were just paying people to be spokespeople. Long story short, he got in huge, and Democrats said, okay, fine. and the Democratic mega donors got in $100 million for a state Supreme Court race in Wisconsin, which has 2.5 media markets, is insane. It's truly insane. And they poured all that money in. Elon Musk went up there and wore a cheese block on his head and did all that stuff and said the future of Western civilization was at stake. And it was important for him because if he could win that seat, then he could tell Senate Republicans who are increasingly annoyed with him, do what I tell you, or I will come to your state and I will beat you. So he put a lot of chips out on the table. And for all of that $100 million and all of everything, do you know what happened? The result was exactly the same as it was 2 years ago when they had a similar race. The Democrat won by 10 points. Couldn't have been a better mirror image of the outcome. The only difference being 500,000 more people turned out to vote, and voter turnout went up by 28% or something like that. And so obviously there are consequences to that. I flagged, I'm sorry, my love of electoral politics is delaying us, but.
Can I just add one thing on this?
Add anything.
Musk thing. So the media is obsessed with Musk and his role in politics and, you know, how this was a referendum on him and so on. And I don't actually really believe any of that, but this was interesting in that it underscores once again that I think the role of money in politics is overstated. Like you cannot, you know, you'd rather have money than not have money, but you can't go into Wisconsin
100%.
and buy an election.
100%.
It
There's only two
doesn't work
kinds
that
of money.
way.
There's only two kinds of money in politics: enough or not enough. The next $50 million doesn't. If that were true, Jeb Bush would have been the Republican nominee and Hillary Clinton would have been president. It's just the money. Not having enough money can kill a campaign, but you're not gonna. You can't buy an election. And I 100% agree with you. I do disagree though on the question of the consequences for Elon Musk. This was. And that's why I included this piece in the Washington Post. Musk to keep spending on politics despite Wisconsin loss, GOP doubts. And it's this blind source, anonymous source, Washington Post piece that says, we talked to people who work on Elon Musk's political operation, and they said Elon Musk is going to keep spending insane amounts of money on this and nothing will change. And I thought, well, what would they say, right? That would be like if you asked my barber, you think Chris is going to get a lot of haircuts in the coming year? Yes, I do. I think he's going to get a ton of haircuts. Of course they think that. Of course they think that because that's what they do. And I very little reason to believe that Elon Musk's behavior over the next 6 months or 6 weeks is predictable.
All right.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Please.
This is great. Yes, we have to talk about Cory Booker's 25-hour speech on the
No diaper.
On the Senate floor,
No diaper.
where he apparently fasted for 3 days so that he wouldn't have to take a pee during this 25-hour marathon.
He dehydrated himself. He did
beat Strom Thurmond, whose previous 24-hour record actually, was like driving at something.
Yes, segregation.
Had a It had a legislative objective.
Yeah, this was like Ted Cruz and the green. This was like Ted Cruz and the green eggs and ham. But read the AP on this. It's a delight.
So the Associated Press writes, it wasn't just about the election results in Wisconsin, where Democratic-backed Judge Susan Crawford won a 10-point victory against Trump and Elon Musk's favored candidate for the state Supreme Court. Some Democrats highlighted New Jersey Senator Cory Booker's marathon record-setting 25-hour Senate speech as a rallying point for frustrated voters. Others pointed to congressional Democrats lining up with a handful of House Republican lawmakers to oppose a procedural rule that would have stopped a proposal for new parents in Congress to be able to vote by proxy. The series of victories gave Democratic leaders moments of relief and vindication of their strategy to focus on Trump's alliances with Musk and other billionaires. That's even as some party officials warned that it was far too early to draw sweeping conclusions from a series of low turnout off-year elections, with polls still showing that the party's brand is deeply unpopular among key groups of voters. I mean, can we also add that, like, there was really nothing surprising about these elections in that Trump wasn't on the ballot and Republicans are now the low propensity voters, in that it's Democrats who are the more educated, more engaged party.
I was genuinely surprised that the Democrats matched their 23 number in Wisconsin. And I took something from that, but I agree with you on those two House seats. And Cory Booker giving a speech. What? How many pieces have you seen about his non-diaper use? What about I was hoping someone would clarify whether or not he used a catheter. And fortunately, the Atlantic and the New York Times were both there to clarify no catheter was involved.
Let this man run in 2028 along with Kamala Harris and Xavier Becerra. Let's go. Let's go.
I think that Cory Booker's marathon session, breaking and good to break Strom Thurmond's record in support of a rotten thing. That's great. And I do, by the way, admire the athleticism, right? That's a thing. Standing and talking for 25 hours is pretty impressive, but I think it will be about as consequential. It would probably be less consequential than Ted Cruz's green eggs and ham filibuster.
I mean, talk about just yelling into a void,
grasping at straws.
And I loved Frank Luntz going around saying, this is exactly what Democrats needed. This was spot on.
Yeah. I mean, again, what's the problem we have, though? The problem we have is that there's so much self-talk in our politics, and that it's all about making your base feel better and feel good. I've covered 4 presidential transitions in Washington. Each one has gotten more arrogant and stupider than the last one. It's amazing. And I keep waiting for someone to figure out a way to appeal to the persuadable voters who win elections. Making Democrats feel good again is not the Democrats' problem or the country's problem right now. The country's problem right now is we have 2 dumb parties, and they both are enslaved by their political bases. They're just captive to the worst impulses of the most partisan, the people most drunk on partisanship. And you cannot run a country that way. Jeez Louise.
All right. Up next, we're leaving politics proper a little bit. This was interesting. Mark Zuckerberg, according to Politico, has snapped up a 15,000-foot, $23 million DC mansion in DC. For a month, neighbors in Washington's upscale Woodland Normanstone neighborhood. I've never even heard of that neighborhood. So
Woodland,
are you familiar with it?
I believe Woodland Normanstone. Yes, I met him. I met him one time. I think I met him one time at an embassy party.
Great.
Woodland Normanstone.
That was good. So he bought this mansion. It looked real nice. I checked out all the pictures yesterday. The sale was the 3rd most expensive in city history and was shrouded in secrecy, with real estate agents muzzled by non-disclosure agreements. Soon after the deal went through in early March, images of the house became pixelated on Google Maps. Meta says he'll be spending more time here, and a private home is safer and more convenient. It would be consistent with Zuckerberg's footprint in other places he visits. He owns properties in Palo Alto, Lake Tahoe, and Hawaii, among other places. And then this is obviously linked to an upcoming trial that Meta is trying to fend off from the Federal Trade Commission.
Yep.
That is working to force it, or is alleging that Meta's acquisition of Instagram and WhatsApp was anti-competitive and to break up. You know, a weird thing is that the federal government does not consider TikTok a Meta competitor.
Yeah.
which it obviously is.
Which it obviously
I think
is.
in ways far more than these other things. So Zuckerberg was actually in DC this week lobbying Trump directly to reach an agreement where the company could just pay out the government and avoid this trial.
And Jeff Bezos, you mentioned TikTok. Jeff Bezos with a last minute entry to buy TikTok. And just to be a broken record, we'll repeat. One of the problems of vesting too much power in one individual is corruption, right? We're going to come and we're going to suck up to this one person to try to gain his or her favor, Donald Trump in this case, and they're going to give us the things that we want, and we have to be courtiers to get those things. And so the answer then is you have to buy a mansion in Washington that's sort of your embassy to the administration, and then seek personal favor with the person. And I guess you got to play the game.
All right. So you also flagged Joe Rogan, calling the possibility of non-criminals being deported with violent gang members horrific. I mean, I think we could all agree that if that's happening, that's not great.
I don't think we can all agree. I think we can. I think there are some who would say, well, what are you going to do? I found this interesting because I don't spend time in the bro podcast world, but I found this interesting because Joe Rogan is talking to an author and a comedian, and they're talking about this. And you're reminded of the fact that Joe Rogan and Theo Von and whomever else may have liked Donald Trump more than Kamala Harris, but they're not going to be reliable mouthpieces in the way that, I don't know, somebody talking about how losing your 401k is a war effort. They're not going to be on message in that way. And I noted this as the first time I saw a big crack emerge on that side of things.
There are others in that Rogan hosted this conspiracy theorist, Ian Carroll, who claimed that Melania Trump was sex trafficked into the country.
Yo.
And he's just like, oh, wow, that's interesting. And there, Candace Owens, who was set to appear at a Trump fundraiser.
What?
As she was going to appear at a Trump fundraiser. This is during the campaign.
Oh, okay.
Canceled her appearance because of her crazy comments. She now says RFK Jr. is the subject of a sexual blackmail scheme on the part of Israel. And so, I mean, any of these people who either are conspiracy theorists or indulge conspiracy theorists, are going to turn against the administration at some point because the conspiracy theories involve people in power.
And I also think in Rogan's case, I'm willing to believe that Joe Rogan is a well-intentioned person who comes to things as he finds them. And that's problematic if you're counting on these folks to be your amplifier. Oh, speaking of social media influencers, I need you to decode for me what's going on with Elon Musk and Ashley St. Clair. I didn't know who Ashley St. Clair is.
I love that you think I'm going to know this.
I think there's a much better chance that you will know this than I will.
Okay. She, to the best I can tell, is some online influencer who claimed to be the mother of Elon's child.
They had Congress around CPAC, I think.
I have well, it's not even okay. And he said, so he paid her $2.5 million and gave her a Tesla and this, that, and the other. Yeah. And now he says, yeah, I'm happy to take a paternity test, but not clear I'm the father.
And I gave you a Tesla. And I gave you a Tesla.
And now she's selling it for $100,000 to try to get more money.
Wow. The influencer community, I don't know if that's where you want to hang out. But.
Yeah. And
I don't know.
She's out there running her mouth. So she seems like a total gold digger.
Okay. And I also wanted to get your take on this. Trump says he gave Tiger Woods his blessing to date Vanessa Trump, who is the ex-wife of his son.
Oh, this is so
Don
on
Jr.
brand.
What? Please decode this.
Well,
for
he's
me.
happy. So Don Jr. is happily coupled up with some new, heiress who's very attractive. And so why would Trump wish the mother of his grandchildren ill? And he loves golf. Like, what could be better? I feel like he would be a huge fan of this.
He was asked about it in the Oval Office, and he said he told me about it, and I said, Tiger, that's good. I'm very happy for both, but they just let them both be happy. Let them both be happy. They're both great. I happen to think the relationship with my son, I think what happened in the relationship was hurt very badly by the witch hunt that went on, Russia, and all of the crap that they put on through who knew nothing about it. So I'm thinking of the moment where Tiger Woods, this is again, a very royal family kind of vibe, a real Henry Tudor kind of vibe. My lord, I wish to lay with the ex-wife of the prince. Is this acceptable? Yes, I give you my blessing to consort with my former daughter-in-law. It's a vibe, as the kids would say.
This was totally on brand for Trump.
And I knew about the girlfriend you're talking about, the Donald Trump Jr. girlfriend you were talking about, because that was the amazing story where he publicly appeared with her, and then the next day, his longtime fiancée, Kimberly Guilfoyle, formerly of Fox News, was shipped to Greece to be the ambassador.
That was amazing.
Amazing. Amazeballs.
Truly amazing. All right. Okay. The White House Correspondents Association, now led by an MSNBC television host, straight news here, has scrapped plans for a comedian who called Trump a murderer, Amber Ruffin.
Yes.
She was going to be the featured guest, and the head of the White House Correspondents Association, Eugene Daniels, called her a perfect fit and this, that, and the other. Well, turns out that she's now canceled, and instead of being honest that they thought it would be a bad look for them because of the vibe shift in DC, where being, insanely anti-Trump is just not a good look, the White House Correspondents Association, Daniels, said, at this consequential moment for journalism, I want to ensure the focus is not on the politics of division, but entirely on awarding our colleagues for their outstanding work and providing scholarship and mentorship to the next generation of journalists, Daniels wrote to members Saturday. Okay, these dinners always have a comedian. And the question to me is, do they still have to pay this person? I assume the answer is yes, because they canceled, not, she didn't cancel. And Daniels went on like a press tour with her. When he booked her, they appeared on all these TV shows together. So, yikes.
Well, the part I find most hilarious. So Eugene Daniels, again, had just for the framing on this, right when the America needed the White House Correspondents Association for really the first time in 100 years, where it really, really, really needed them to have their act together. And Eugene Daniels, unfortunately, was the president when that occurred. And the week that they stopped doing the press pool and the administration said, no, we'll pick and we'll kick you out if you don't say the things that we want you to say, Eugene Daniels took a job to be a weekend anchor on MSNBC and was no longer a White House reporter. He had the perfect opportunity to say, I must step aside because of the change in my career, and I will leave it to some boring, serious, grown-up person, right, of whom there are many in the Correspondents Association. But he did not. And he said, and we're excited to have Amber Ruffin. And then here's the best part. Amber Ruffin goes on a podcast and is making fun of Eugene Daniels and the Correspondents Association because she says, yeah, they told me I got to hit both sides in my thing. I'm not doing that. I'm going to roast Trump. So you can imagine this experience where the board says to Eugene Daniels, hey, this is not a good time for us to look like a bunch of hacks and basically have the comedic equivalent of Steven Crowder from the left get up and say a bunch of unfunny, mean things about Donald Trump and Republicans. This wouldn't be a good look for us. So then, this is conjecture on my part, Eugene Daniels goes to Amber Ruff and is like, hey, girl, really excited about you coming. Just want to make sure you're going to hit both sides and spread it around, and it's going to be good-natured fun, right? And she said, very understandably, no. Who do you think you hired, right? Get somebody else if that's what you want, but that's not what I do. And so they had to let her go. And it was like an amazing, in Eugene Daniels' astonishing series of failures in his job, this is a real nice coup de grace that they're going to end up with no comedian, and I assume somber intonations about the importance of press freedom. I beg of you people, stop doing this dinner. Please stop doing this dinner. The work that the White House Correspondents Association does is important and worthwhile and good. Stop doing this stupid dinner. It is a blight on the media. It is a blight on Washington. It's bad for you.
All right.
Oh,
I mean, Chris, this is like the first. I mean, it's not even the first, but at some point we need to have an Olympics of these, which is, now they tell us. In new book, top Biden aide describes out of it president before Trump debate. And so the author, Chris Whipple, sat down with former Biden chief of staff, Ron Klain, and did an interview with him. And he writes, this is a Guardian write-up. They obtained the book. And in the forthcoming book by Whipple about the 2024 election, he writes, according to Klain, it turned out that Biden, quote, didn't know what Trump had been saying and couldn't grasp what the back and forth was. He left preparation and for the debate and fell asleep by the pool. He obsessed about foreign leaders, saying, quote, these guys say I'm doing a great job as president, so I must be a great president. He, quote, didn't really understand what his argument was on inflation and, quote, had nothing to say about a 7-second term other than finish the job. As described by Klain to the reporter Chris Whipple, at one point Biden had an idea, quote, if he looked perplexed when Trump talked, voters would understand that Trump was an idiot, Klain replied. And Klain replied, sir, when you look perplexed, people just think you're perplexed. And this is our problem in this race. I mean, that was not actually their problem in this race. Their problem was that he was falling asleep by the pool, except for that the pool was, at the lectern in front of the entire country. But, Klain was also out there arguing that Biden should stay in the race.
I get why people I understand why people who work for Donald Trump today are not out saying, I think he has no understanding of economics. I don't think he understands how trade works. I think that he is just totally bananas on this. I get it. You work for the person. You're supposed to carry the message. Here's a part on Ron Klain I don't get. How did you get to April of 2024? How did Democrats around the president, the soon-to-be nominee, the White House, the failure, I don't expect partisans to come out and brief against their own interest, but this is definitely a case where it's on them for not pushing inside, that Ron Klain didn't go to Jill Biden, that Ron Klain didn't say to the people around the president, this has to stop. This has to stop. This cannot go on. And I would say the same thing of the people inside the Trump administration. Like, I don't expect you to not con us and spin, because that's what we know you're paid to do. But come on, behind closed doors, you're not able to. And by the way, if you can't, you got to quit eventually, right? You can give it a shot, but sooner or later, you got to walk away.
It's crazy. And if I were Klain, I would be so embarrassed to say all this stuff. Where is that part of him?
It's
say he was out there vouching for this guy when the guy could not prepare for a debate, let alone lead the country.
I don't think that probably when Ron Klain talked to the author for this book, that I'm going to guess that he was not aware of what would transpire, and that the reframing of the narrative, the Jake Tapper book and all this other stuff that was going to go on, that everybody would say, well, we always knew. We always knew this guy was a mess and there was no way that he could run. So it makes Ron Klain look, you're like, hey, why? What?
Yeah. Okay. But eventually, okay. And I actually asked somebody to do this today. We need to compile all the before and afters. Like, here's what they said in the fall or in the summer, and here's what they're saying now. And we have to have like a ranking.
Yeah.
Between reporters and Biden aides, like that will be great.
Yeah. That would be good. I look forward to that. Now for a word about a new podcast from our friends at the Competitive Enterprise Institute. Let's talk about Section 230. That's the law that protects the internet services we rely on from being sued into oblivion. As important as it is, Section 230 is also the most misunderstood law on the internet. So why do pundits and politicians on both sides of the aisle want it gone? In the new series, Otherwise Objectionable, tech journalist Mike Masnick takes you inside its origins. The immersive podcast docuseries traces the story of this controversial law, examining its past to understand how we got here and how we can move forward. Hear from experts who witnessed the birth of the web, the lawmakers who wrote Section 230, and the tech pioneers who couldn't have succeeded without it. How did Section 230 shape the internet? What happens if it's repealed? And how does it apply to today's biggest challenges like AI? Find Otherwise Objectionable. Listen now wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay. Business news. Chris, you want to take the FCC?
FCC continues its crackdown on, I guess we'll call it free speech. But this time they say, and again, we don't know whether they're actually going to they're going to take anybody's broadcast license. But Brendan Carr, the chairman of the FCC, says that he's going to review the ABC broadcast, the licenses of ABC owned broadcast stations, because Walt Disney still has DEI. And it seems like a very strange space for the Federal Communications Commission to enter. That seems like maybe the Justice Department would be the place that you would do that. But I guess we are all, remember, what did Biden like to say? A whole of government approach. We're going to have a whole of government approach on climate change. We're going to have a whole of government approach on ending police brutality. Everything was going to be a whole of government approach. So I guess we've got a whole of government approach on this stuff. So this is going to court. All this stuff is going to go to court, and we'll keep you up to date. How are your Newsmax shares doing?
You know what? I really wished I'd bought some in the morning and sold them that night, because on opening day, they were up huge. And by now they have tumbled a whopping 77.5%. I mean, who could have seen that coming? Following a 2,230% surge in Newsmax's first 2 days of trading.
A higher market cap than News Corp.
I mean, after debuting on the New York Stock Exchange, at one point, the rally gave the company a market cap of nearly $30 billion, surpassing the market cap of legacy media companies such as Warner Brothers, Discovery, and Fox Corp. I mean, Chris, you know what I thought of this was the Warren Buffett School of Investing, which is just, you look at the core value of companies, and those are the ones you go with to avoid situations like this.
But it's like a Robinhood Dogecoin situation, right? That if people say, I like, and Newsmax and they did a special kind of stock that doesn't have to go through the normal SEC, whatever. It's basically if you want to be a meme stock. So like Trump cryptocurrency and other things that are like, hey, you want to show your support for Newsmax, buy some Newsmax stock. And, Newsmax I underestimated the threat that Newsmax posed to Fox 5 years ago. And they have hung in, and by being an even more obsequious mouthpiece to the administration than anybody could ever desire. They have taken a bite out of Fox's business. Of course, Fox is making so much money off of the current news environment and their close relationship with the administration that I guess they can afford to let Newsmax take a bite.
And Steve Kornacki, data guru, is heading to NBC News. He got his start on MSNBC as MSNBC spins off.
I love this.
Kornacki, 45, will continue to be NBC's go-to expert for statistical analysis of polls and election results during major sporting events, including Triple Crown horse racing, the Olympics, and the NFL. He will appear on the streaming channel NBC News Now, along with the broadcast network franchises Meet the Press Today and NBC Nightly News. Shocker that he didn't choose to go with.
Yeah, they're spinning
MSNBC.
off. They're spinning off MSNBC and keeping NBC News, and this is a very good move for NBC News. He's just a great asset for them. I know him a little. I think I have very friendly feelings towards him because he's a very nice guy.
He's so nice.
He's such a nice guy, and he's very collegial and all that stuff. But he's also just excellent at this. And whenever I'm at the big board talking about races, talking about numbers, I'm always thinking, well, that was okay, but you're no Steve Kornacki, right? Every election night, I'm like, it was okay, but you're no Steve Kornacki. The guy is really, really good at this. And, you know, the best part about what he does, he keeps it fair, right? His analysis is not what he wants to happen. His analysis is what he thinks is going to happen. And there are people in the field, right? Harry Enton at CNN is great. We talked about Josh Crosshour last week, but that's what people like me should be trying to do, which is when you're doing electoral analysis, particularly, that it's without fear or favor. Good for NBC, good for him.
Chris, that brings us to our style section, where you are definitely going to have to take this first item, but I have opinions on our second item.
Okay, New York.
So the first item, go ahead.
A very snarky New York Times style piece. The big fat Windsor knot takes Washington. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, the central character in the group chat debacle, favors plump knots that lack a dimple, giving them the look of a tie drawn by a child. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and the EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin similarly favor knots scaled somewhere between meatballs and dinner rolls. There's a brashness to it that kind of says, we're taking over, and what are you going to do about it? Mr. Boyer, who is a fashion person, told the New York Times. He even ventured that there is something Freudian going on with these knots. Mine is bigger than yours, he offered. Okay, real talk, real necktie talk. I favor a Windsor knot with a spread collar shirt. 2 reasons I do. I have a huge head. I have a giant, you're aware of how big my head is. I have a huge cranium, and I have a big neck. I have like a 19-inch neck, 18.5-inch neck. I need a big knot, right? If I'm wearing a spread collar shirt, so it hopefully doesn't look like a meatball or a dinner roll or a monkey fist or whatever the New York Times said when I wear a Windsor knot. But I don't always wear a Windsor knot, because sometimes a Windsor knot is called for, and sometimes a 4-in-hand knot is called for. I don't know when a double Windsor is called for. I'm not familiar with the circumstance where I don't recall ever having to wear a double Windsor. That's just too much, especially on a normal sized person. That I can't imagine. But then there's the 4-in-hand, which is slightly off center, and it's a preppier, slimmer look. And you would wear that with a narrow collar, right? If you're wearing a button down collar and it's more casual. So the 4-in-hand knot is more casual than the Windsor knot, which is more formal business. It's not one or the other. It's that you need both. You need both knots in your repertoire to deal with the occasion and the clothes. I don't think it's Freudian, though they do like ties. They like big ties.
I have no idea what the difference between any of these knots are. So
You know, the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. wears always a 4-in-hand knot. It's skinny, it's round, and then a Windsor knot is more triangular.
okay. But I was happy to see that you sent this across the transom, which was steak fries, deservedly reviled or underappreciated edible spoons. This is in the Times, and it has a picture of these gigantic fries that are just like baked potato wedges, basically.
What's a steak fry? How do you define steak fry?
Well, I think of a steak frite, like when someone says steak frite, those are like French fries. But if someone
Yeah, those
says
are
a
almost
steak
shoestring.
fry,
Yeah.
steak fry, they're like these disgusting things.
It's a plank. It's a big plank.
that are like.
Yep.
I mean, this is exactly what the article says. They sit uncomfortably between genus fry and genus baked potato, lacking the crunch of the former and the richness of the latter. And I am not into them.
Now, I will make one caveat. Have you ever had a JoJo potato?
No.
JoJo potato, regional speciality of Northern Appalachia, Pittsburgh Metro, and it's like a wedge. It's a wedge of potato, and then it's battered or dusted and deep fried, so you get a substantial crunch on the outside. And then, so it's I would say the JoJo potato steak fry is have a nacho. I don't know what you're doing with the steak fry. I agree with you. Doesn't make sense. But the JoJo potato, which is, I would say, a cousin to the steak fry, is very good. But I, on spring break, went off my diet for 3 or 4 days and ate French fries. And I want to tell you, I love French fries. French fries are so good. We ate at Raising Cane's. We ate at In-N-Out. We ate at Whataburger. We ate at Del Taco. We did a Western United States regional fast food chain bonanza. Of those fries, don't sleep on the Del Taco fry. It's a crinkle cut fry. Very good. Very good. And the Whataburger French fry, probably the best of those. The Raising Cane's fry was good, but I gotta say the Whataburger fry was very good. And they were all good. The best burger is In-N-Out of those, but the fries were great. And I had not eaten at a Raising Cane's before, and it was excellent. Fat guy news.
So is that chicken?
Yeah, Raising Cane's is
I've obviously never been there.
It's a chicken strip establishment. They're not, I guess they probably have a chicken sandwich, but they're into tenders or strips or whatever you want to call them. And it's basically a boneless fried chicken situation, and very good French fries, very good dipping sauce. My youngest son and enjoyed it very much. And we sat outside in the Arizona sunshine and enjoyed delicious fried chicken and French fries. Let's be honest, America. French fries are where it's at. French fries are delicious.
I don't really think you can do much better than McDonald's.
Well, you know what I keep wondering? Now that everybody is into animal fat again, do you think McDonald's can Robert F. Kennedy Jr. make McDonald's return to their original fry recipe?
Oh, was the original?
Yeah, the original is cooked in beef fat, cooked in beef tallow. And
Is
that's
there
what
actually a difference in the taste?
huge difference.
Really? What's the difference?
Okay, so there was a guy. Do you remember back when you may have been too young, but fat was the enemy and people ate Snackwell's cookies.
Oh, no. That was my childhood.
Yeah, fat is the enemy. Don't eat fat. And so they're pumping people full of carbs. Oh, it's got no fat in it. Marshmallows have no fat in them. Well, yeah, good call. So in the attack on coronary disease, Malcolm Gladwell actually did a really interesting podcast about this. There was a guy, had a heart attack, became obsessed with the idea of saturated fats, started taking out ads. He's got rich making drywall nails and started taking out full page ads, pressuring McDonald's to give up animal fat in its French fries. So McDonald's did, and the fries were not as good. McDonald's fries are still very good, but they are not nearly as good as they were pre 1995, let's say, whatever year whatever Clinton era Snackwell's cookie moment in American culinary history was.
I had no idea. Okay.
Again, fat guy news. I'm here for you. Whatever you need to know, I've got it. The meat and animal product beat. I'm here for you.
All right, Chris, that brings us to our obsessions of the week. These stories that we can't get out of our heads. And I clicked on Michael Powell's story in The Atlantic, headline, "The Double Standard in the Human Rights World." And it goes along with the story in The Telegraph. The headline is, "Hamas quietly drops thousands of deaths from casualty figures, claims that 70% of the fatalities are women and children are complete nonsense, says report." So the Michael Powell story, given that it's published in The Atlantic, it contains every caveat you would expect. Basically that, yes, Israel is terrible and commits human rights atrocities and they're the worst and all the caveats. But it does examine this question, which is, why is the human rights world disproportionately obsessed with the alleged human rights violations committed by Israel when there's so much bad stuff happening everywhere else in the world?
Mm-hmm.
And it is a worthy subject of investigation given how much attention all these claims by Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International and Doctors Without Borders and all these organizations that claim to stand on the on a moral high ground get. And I couldn't figure out, I'll have to come back if I can find it, but I read a piece by a former research head at one of these organizations who recounted getting reports from the heads of, different countries everywhere that were compiled into a book in the state of human rights in every country. And she said, our chapter on Israel was always, 4, 5, 6 times longer than everywhere else. And I was the only person who was able to see the whole publication. And I started asking questions about why. I can see that there are much worse human rights abuses taking place elsewhere in the world. I really couldn't get any answers about this. So I thought that this piece was worth flagging alongside the Hamas quote unquote health ministry changing its numbers, which one would think, what many of these organizations are citing are the fatality figures from Hamas. Shouldn't they have been trying to get to the bottom of the accuracy of these numbers? We don't see a lot of curiosity from them about this. And organizations like the International Committee for the Red Cross actively participating in Hamas's propaganda stunts as they release these as they have released these Israeli hostages over the past 6 or so months, 5 months.
And I guess I missed it.
It would really only be 3 months since Trump's been in office. Sorry.
I guess I missed it that Michael Powell went to The Atlantic. Or is he still with the New York Times?
No. He left New York Times for The Atlantic.
Great hire. Great freaking hire, Atlantic. That is such a good choice. Michael Powell is such a good writer. What a dude. What a dude. That's awesome.
All right, over to you.
Okay. Kristen Welker from NBC's Meet the Press scored a phoner with Donald Trump for her show on Sunday. And it was the most wide-ranging interview that we've heard from Trump in some time. And Welker asked him a bunch of questions that I would love to have the chance to ask him, including, why do you keep talking about running for a third term? Are you joking? Everybody says you're joking. Are you joking? And Donald Trump, amazingly, says, a lot of people want me to do it. And he says, oh, what is it? What's the line? He says, he says, No, he says, not joking. Won't rule out seeking a third term in the White House, tells NBC News. There are methods for doing so. And just to give you a little insight into a writer's process, I had been wrestling with a piece for the Dispatch, and it was about comparisons between Franklin Roosevelt and I had it was there, and I had an idea about comparisons between Franklin Roosevelt and Donald Trump. And I couldn't quite land it. And I was annoying my great editor there, Rachel Larimore, by like, I need another day. Can I have another day? And then I arose of a Sunday morning, or I think it came out Saturday night. And there it was. Trump was like, no, I'm not kidding about running for a third term. I'm going to do it. And it gave me my way in and to write about that. And the point about Trump, this thing that I'd been trying to get to and wrestle with, I'm going to do the ultimate Washington doucheroo move. I'm going to quote myself. There is a rhetorical conveyor belt on which Trump's ideas, or as Vice President J.D. Vance might say, desires, are carried out of the shadows of impossibility and into the broad daylight of inevitability. It starts as trolling or a joke, then becomes a bargaining position in service of a real policy issue, the old seriously but not literally rope-a-dope. And then the last furlong is carried by an incredulous surprise that anyone would be shocked that he's doing exactly what he has been saying all along. From irony to strategy to reality. Greenland is a gag. Greenland is actually about highlighting European national security weaknesses. Greenland is deadly serious. And I'd been trying to get to this, thinking about this, and it is remarkable to think, right, how the press went along for the ride on this with Donald Trump in the third term. Are you going to run for a third term? No, I'm kidding. It's a joke. What are you talking about? Only the lamestream media would believe that. And then he keeps saying it. They keep asking. The great Nate Moore, who will be leaving us soon, my AEI colleague and our fellow Wretcho, who is the exit light is lit for his progression into a robust and wonderful career as an attorney. I said, pull everything you can find. Give me the history of Donald Trump talking about a third term. And there it was, in order, in succession of this phenomenon of we're joking, we're bargaining. Actually, I meant what I said the entire time. And it was so sorry to self-obsess, but that was amazing to me.
All right, Chris, that brings us to my favorite time of the week, which is reader mail. We have a note from George Mueller-Kint in Germany. And George writes, Dear Wretches, here's something that could be the answer to Mr. Stirewalt's secret prayers to complete his rite of spring and welcome daylight savings time in style. Uninvited, unwanted images in my head of ballet in shower level, gel requiring rain under a full moon among the spring flowers. Never mind, moving on.
Whoa.
On April
1st, registered users of the McDonald's app in Germany only, ? Not sure, with 400 bonus points had the opportunity to pick up a McRib Shower Gel in participating restaurants for said 400 points. He sent a screen grab as an attachment, apparently. Alas, I had only 390, and I am currently fasting. So close. Not an April Fool's joke. There have been others. McFlurry shower gel, ketchup shower gel. Bottles are already popping up on eBay, and there is video evidence. Enjoy and keep up the good work. Jörg Müller-Kint, Neustadt in der Weinstraße, Germany. Well, let me tell you, gross and amazing. Thank you for the, you know what great listeners we have? We have such great listeners that we get McRib facing dispatches from Europe. That's the life we're living, Eliana. That's what our...
Wait, Colin Chicola has sent a picture of this shower gel.
Ach du Liebe.
Oh my gosh.
Ach du Liebe.
And it's called douche gel.
Douche
gel. Correct.
Yeah, the douche gel. Yeah, we are cleaning our pits with the douche gel. Yeah. We are smelling like some McRibs. Holy crocodile.
Oh.
That is...
Nothing could make me more bleh.
Okay, I'm obviously going to buy some on eBay, and I probably won't bathe with it, but I am going to smell it because how could I not now that Mr. Mueller-Kint has flagged this?
You're going to track it down?
I mean, I'm going to set a hard cap here. I'm not going to spend more than $25 on it, but if McRib Shower Gel can be had for $25, I'm in.
Okay, I'll take a whiff.
Take a whiff. There's your show. There's your show title.
Oh, all right. And Doug Johnson of Texas writes us, there has been a story in the Dallas Morning News about Gateway Church and Robert Morris. While the story is interesting, this piece on the op-ed page by the public editor explaining how they actually did the journalism behind the story is inspiring. Real journalism is not dead. So we will link that story that's called Reviewing the News Coverage of the Robert Morris Scandal. Also, the fact that we have a public editor who explains on a regular basis why and how they do the things they do is a good idea. And yes, we get the actual paper every day.
Nice. And I love a public editor. It's expensive to have. It's hard. It's complicated. An ombuds person, but somebody who helps explain to the audience. I think it's a real good way to show that you're serious about audience service and customer service. I dig it. Right on, Mr. Johnson. Thank you.
Chris, that brings us to your favorite time of the week, where I am forced to say something nice. Go ahead.
The Neiman Lab has a handy-dandy compendium of how to leak to a journalist with some very useful tips on if you work someplace that you feel like there's something you got to get out, but you don't want to get busted doing it, how to leak to a journalist. So any wretches out there who have a story that they're trying to get to somebody, us, it's a very useful compendium of how to do it. So I'm for that. So leak away.
Chris, my favorite story was a fun New York Times story about how a Black progressive transformed into a conservative star. And it's about a young man who was supposed to be on the Netflix reality show called The Circle, where a bunch of strangers who live in separate apartments compete for a cash prize. And he was supposed to be, so he was a left-winger who marched in Black Lives Matter protests, and he voted for Bernie Sanders in 2016. And the producers, these guys on The Circle, adopt fake digital identities to fool their competitors. And they wanted him to pose as a white woman and lecture, woke white woman, basically. And so it says, Mr. DuRousseau spent hours boning up on right-wing politics to get ready for debates with conservative contestants. But as he watched videos from PragerU, the conservative advocacy group, and Candace Owens, a right-wing influencer, he found himself nodding along. And he is now an influencer, a Gen Z influencer, who does videos about conservative politics and policy. He lives in LA. They have pictures of him walking around with a selfie stick. And I just thought it was a cute story.
Nice. Very nice.
And it didn't contain the, any kind of snark or condescension.
No, I read it. He sounds like as my sister would say, he sounds like he's one in a row.
Yeah, he would. So that is all the time we have for the news about the news. If you have a story you want us to talk about, email us at wretches@nebulouspodcast.com and sign up for our newsletter at nebulouspodcast.com. This has been Ink-Stained Wretches from Nebulous Media, produced by Colin Chicola. Find us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for Wretches.
Do it.